edition of Straight Talk with Stevie Mack, Doc's Block. As always, this is not a guest. He should be my co-host. This is really my co-host. I'm talking about the one and only Brother Q. What's up, Brother Q? Shalom, Mack.
Shalom, Mack. What's going on?
Not much. Well, that's a lot. A lot's going on. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I take that back. I said nothing much. There's a lot going on. By the time people see this tomorrow, we just finished, or some of our beloved brothers and sisters thought it not robbery to go on a march, right? It's August 28th, 2020. And if I do the math, a good 57 years, I want to say, ago, brothers and sisters thought it not robbery to march with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the March on Washington. And this morning I put a post on Facebook and we had a conversation, right? And I said, marching is biblical. And I came from Joshua 6:7, and it said, advance, march around the city with an armed guard, going ahead of the ark of the Lord.
Yes.
Right? And I know Black people, we did a lot of marching in this country, right? Marching for equal rights, civil rights, human rights, you name it. And it seems like because there's been a lack of it, right? So therefore, the other side, brothers and sisters, riot. But there are others, I think Tupac even made a verse about that. He said, Cali, they riot, not rally, right? But a lot of us in the East Coast, or the Southeast, if you will, subscribe to the tenets of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., civil disobedience, peaceful protest. And the point I was trying to make is that Joshua marched around the wall, right? And we know that the Most High was with them, and those walls came tumbling down. You, as the scholar, the biblical scholar that you are, and I always love your point of view because it's not that mainstream point of view, you know what I mean? And you always know how to articulate. What was the counter? Because you had a counter. You came from the scroll too. You came from the Word of God too. What was your counter? If you want to talk about that.
So the counter was going out of Isaiah, you know, and looking at 42. 1 and 2, and it was speaking about the voice of the Lord not being heard in the streets, or as well as Matthew's 12 and 19. The reason why I reference those particular chapters and verse had to do with the Most High God not being in support of any of these governments of men, because all governments of men are not righteous by no stretch of the imaginations. I would just give examples. Our use of contracts, you know, is not of the Most High God. When we're dealing with one another with respect to our relationships. The other one, you know, marriages would be another one.
Right.
Because, you know, there is no man that can marry two souls, you know, scripturally speaking. Look at that. You know, our marriages are done where you're taking parchment paper, you know, if you will, to two souls together in marriage. But when you listen to the marriage vows themselves, you know, it's always by the state of, I now pronounce you, so forth, you know, such and such and such and such, you know, man and woman, or husband and wife, you know, where the permission is given to you by a member of clergy, by the power vested from the state, you know. So those are just some examples of that. So the Most High would never sanction, you know, anyone marching and protesting a government that he, you know, no gender specific, does not recognize, you know, and that's the way we should actually look at those things. Why would we be protesting government to alter itself in such a way where we could have this coming together when the Most High God doesn't have anything whatsoever to do with any of these governments?
So I always appreciate different point of views, right? The sense of point of view, because I feel a lot of times we want to be mono-thought, and I don't think you can grow when your mind is closed, right? And you mentioned the scriptures. Could you read that Isaiah 42? Because when I read it, I was like, oh shucks, I didn't even see it that way. You know what I mean? If you don't mind.
Yeah. All right.
And for you viewers out there, we're going to put the scripture right here. So if you want to take notes, we encourage you to do that. Don't take our word for it. Check it for yourself.
It says, behold my servant, whom I uphold, mine elect, in whom my soul delighteth. I have put my spirit, the Ruach, upon him. Mm-hmm. He shall bring forth judgment to the Gentiles. Mm-hmm. He shall not cry, nor lift up, nor cause his voice to be heard in the street. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about the Gentile, and sometimes people assume, that Gentile, some people may go with it and be like, oh, it's, a particular group, but all a Gentile is someone that does not adhere to the laws of the Most High God, who does not have Christ consciousness, right? And that can be anyone. You can be a Jew, and be a Gentile, because a Gentile is just one who does not subscribe to the commandments. And somebody may say, wait a minute, the Jew, adheres to the law. No, we're talking about those 12 commandments. We're not talking about the 601 that are added. So that's how you can look at that.
Okay. So
and you also pull in, of course, you would have to go into Josephus, and you can find out, talking about the first 5 books. You got to find out who actually wrote those books, which were Esdras, not Moses, and you can begin to look at it that way.
Now, it's funny because a lot of people, we always say Moses, the first 5 books of Moses, right? And I always tell brothers and sisters, I said that's not necessarily accurate, because I think even in some parts of Deuteronomy, we'll put it on the screen, I don't know at the top, where it's recorded Moses' death. And I was like, well, and Moses is never saying I, it's always in the third person, right? So Esdras or Ezra, right? He was a scribe, right? So
yes,
a lot of us don't know that, and I think that's interesting. So back to that point, you said something about not taking it to the streets, right? Okay, so I'm gonna play advocate. I'm not gonna play the Satan. I'm not gonna be the adversary here, but for argument's sake, right?
Okay.
An argument to just give a dissenting point of view. So who do we go to? Okay, so I get it. Yeah, I'm with it. I appeal to the Most High. I say my prayers, but they still killing us in the street. There's still police brutality. They still out and out shooting, and people are seeing it. We're seeing this almost. It seems like every day, a nonstop loop on the phones and
absolutely.
Who do I appeal to?
You go to you. You know what I'm saying? Like, you are made in the image of the Most High God. And that's the spirit of the Most High God. That's the energy, right? That's the electricity. That's the thought. And if you look at it, and it's about perspective. If you look at what's going on right now, you're being shown that people that look like you and I have all the power in the world. You remember before we talked about the NBA?
Yeah.
We talked about the NFL. These individuals that run these organizations by way of their title being commissioners, right? They're spokesmen for the league or the association. If it were not for individuals that look like you and I, there would be no league. So now, if these individuals were to pull out of these associations and of these leagues, there would be no associations or league. They would collapse. So the power rests with us. So most people believe that if we step away, what do we do? You'll live, because you're living now. Right now, there are no churches. They were shut down by the state, right?
Yeah.
There are no temples. They were shut down by the state. There are no mosques. They were shut down by the state. So where do you go? You're still living and breathing. You're still speaking. But the power rests between each and every one of us. We're connected. We're binded. The government does not have anything whatsoever to do with our movements. Because even when you go into, if you will, the Declaration of Independence. It tells you exactly where the government gets its power. The power rests with the governed. And if any point in time that relationship is held into question, the government itself can be abolished and done away with, and something new is formed. That's within the context of the document itself. And that's the stuff that we don't ever talk about. We'll talk about being equal to someone, but no one can give you equality.
Right.
The Most High God provides you with rights. See, we're always under the assumption when we hear the word civil rights that it's actual rights. No, civil rights should actually be called civil privileges. It's not rights. The government can't give you anything. Only thing that they can give you is privilege. And if they give you privilege, they can take it away. And that's what you're seeing. That's what you saw. Now, what you're seeing with television, you're seeing all these individuals exerting their rights to be, to exist. They're acknowledging the true and living God and their connection to God. That's what you're seeing. See, so they've stepped out of the reality that these privileges mean something. The privilege it doesn't mean anything. The right rests with the people. And it just has to click in their heads. That's all it is.
Okay.
Because community starts in the head. And you just got to break down commune. Right?
Coming together, right? A collective.
Sharing.
Right.
Sharing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And we haven't done that.
Interesting point. There's two things I want to get to. I appreciate that point. I hear what you're saying. So it's about.
Did I answer the question though for you?
You did, because you're saying it starts with us, right?
Yes.
So,
yeah.
But at the end of the day, it seems like there's an attack on us, right? There's a war, right?
Absolutely.
Where did Yeshua, some of us call him Yeshua HaMashiach, those who don't know, referring to Jesus Christ, what did he say in Matthew? Because I know we read the Isaiah. Could you read what he said in Matthew?
It says, he shall not strive nor cry, neither shall any man hear his voice in the streets. You know, and the whole context is God's beloved servant. You know what I'm saying? And so when you look at the commandments, hold on.
Sure.
When you look at the commandments, right? The first two commandments are the most important, because those two commandments in particular, they're dealing with love.
What are they? Can we just say it for the people out there? And I'm gonna put it up there too.
Love the Most High God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, right? And the other one is love thy neighbor as you love thyself, right? So when you're looking at those two things, we're talking about love of the Most High God. But remember, you're made in the image of the Most High God. So once you acknowledge that you are the physical manifestation of God on earth, that's the first relationship. So now when you're loving your neighbor, right, you see the Most High God in your neighbor. So you wouldn't do any harm to your neighbor if you acknowledge the fact that there's a connection that rests between you and your neighbor. So when we see in the death and destruction does not have anything whatsoever to do with the Most High God. And you could look at that in the Apocrypha, and that'll come from the Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 1, and you could go to 12. I believe it's like 12 to 15, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Right? And it talks about the Most High God not having to do anything with the destruction of man, but man doing that to himself.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So if we could get, and you're looking at the devaluing of life, right? I don't care if it's the Caucasian officer that's killing us, we're also killing ourselves as well. It's all about perspective. So just think about this, you know, and this may go above some, this may ruffle some feathers, but I want you to look at this one right here. I live in Brownsville. I love Brownsville.
Right.
I know the things that go on in Brownsville, and I wouldn't have it any other way but to be here to like love my brothers and sisters.
Yes, sir. Right.
When you look at the devaluing of life, and an officer comes into Brownsville, if you don't show any value to your life, they're not going to value yours either, because it becomes a situation where it's kill or be killed. Mm-hmm. Now, when we're looking at these officers killing individuals, right, it's absolutely wrong. Yes. It's these individuals need to be jailed just like you would do anyone else. I could care less about, their protection, their qualified immunity and things of that nature. Right. That should automatically be stripped.
Right.
Like if you have insurance, their insurance needs to go up, and they need to be hit personally for that. Yes, because you chose this career. That's right. You could have chose to do something else. That's just like when you're in the military.
That's right.
When you're in the military, you already know I got a gun. There's a possibility that I may die. So yes, their jobs and their careers. Oh man, like it's important, but when you're held to a higher standard than most, because you literally hold life and death in your hand. Mm-hmm. Same thing as a doctor. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like malpractice suits. You chose this. Right. So you chose this. This is what comes with this. So it needs to be handled in that manner. So when you're looking at individuals' lives getting snuffed out and brothers and sisters are getting tired, Scripture says, pull out, come out of her, because this is a very wicked system. Right. And people have given this Caucasian individual too much power. They did not set up this government. This government was set up by individuals that look like you and I. However, they're coming out of Europe. Mm-hmm. They're coming out of Europe and coming over here. And when they're coming over here, there's also individuals that look like you and I who are indigenous to this landmass, and they're called American. Yeah. And you can just go into the 1828 definition of American, and it talks about copper-colored people.
Copper-colored.
Yeah. So this is what you're seeing. So that's why I always say every skinfolk is not your kinfolk.
Yes, sir. Yes,
that's
sir.
What that comes from.
All right.
I hope I answered that question.
Nah, man, come on, man. You're my brother. Yes. I feel like you did. And I feel like I'm referencing, you reference Revelation 18:4, where it says, come out of the, right? And
absolutely.
About come out of my people.
Right.
But what do you mean? Physically come out? Like, where do I go? Like, I'm in Brownsville, right? I'm East New York. We worked in Brownsville, right? Yeah. Brothers in Oakland catching hell. Brothers in the Fifth Ward of Houston catching hell. Brothers in Baltimore. Where, Oregon, I mean, places out at Wisconsin, what's going on? Where do I go?
You're here. You stay here. You know what I'm saying? Like, so what we're talking about is a theocracy, where a priest and each man and each woman represents that priesthood, because there's a connection to the Most High God. Think about this. If I'm gonna use sports because that seems to be the biggest thing right now. And the one thing I do not like and do not understand, well, I understand and I acknowledge it, is intentional, that a gentleman by the name of Curt Flood is never mentioned. And I would admonish anyone to.
And I didn't mean to cut your flow.
Yes,
so, who is Curt Flood? Because I saw your post about that. Yeah. So, can you break that down? Like, who was that brother? And I never heard of him. I'm gonna be frank. Yes. So, break it down.
So, Curt Flood was one, first and foremost, is an individual that looks like you and I. Mm-hmm. And he played the sport of baseball. Mm-hmm. He played for the St. Louis Cardinals. At this particular time, they had won 2 championships, and they didn't win in the year that is now we're talking about.
Gotcha.
He was traded by his owner of the team.
Right.
And he refused that trade. He was being traded to the Phillies. The Phillies were seen as a racist organization, and he wanted no parts of that organization.
Okay.
So what he decided to do was sue Major League Baseball. Mm-hmm. That was something that was never done before. And he sued on the basis of the reserve clause, and that had to do with antitrust. Okay. So he felt that they were breaking the antitrust, and he said himself he was not a slave. He wasn't someone that should be and could be owned. Because at that time, the contracts that were in place, they held the players in perpetuity. So they were on that team at the behest of the owner of the team, and they could do whatever they could with them. And he said that is unfair, which it was. So that's why today we have free agency. And I'm always shocked, I'm appalled, and I get frustrated when I hear individuals like Stephen A. Smith, I hear Charles Barkley, I'll hear players, right. And none of these individuals, LeBron James included, Michael Jordan, no individual ever speaks this man's name. And if it wasn't for him, none of these guys, especially to LeBron, you couldn't make a decision. You would.
A master and slave relationship.
This is Curt Flood, baseball's Bolshevik.
He was public enemy number one.
What started as a routine trade has become a dedicated effort to change the structure of baseball.
In late 1969, a center fielder named Curt Flood was traded from St. Louis to Philadelphia. He refused to go and decided to fight America's pastime.
Baseball owners say the move could spell disaster.
There's no question about it. It's the worst thing that has ever happened to baseball.
Curt Flood's legacy is that he gave his life for a lot of baseball players who don't know who he is.
He helped to change the way they do business. Every day you read the sports page, whether his name is in there or not, Curt's there.
It's October 8th, 1969. Curt gets a call in the morning from not the general manager, not the owner, Gussie Busch, but some middle manager in the front office calls him and in sort of a monotone voice says, "Curt, you and Tim McCarter have been traded to the Philadelphia Phillies."
It was no small trade. Few ball players ever become as successful and popular as Curt Flood, who was known to fans as a prolific hitter and defensive wizard, streaking across the outfield to snare fly ball after fly ball. By 1969, he had helped lead the St. Louis Cardinals to 3 World Series in the previous 6 years.
The Cardinals win. They're the new world champions.
Curt's the longest standing member on the team. He's a 3-time All-Star. He's a huge fan favorite.
Despite his stardom on and off the field, the Cardinals had begun to sour on Flood.
Fly ball, Flood. Hey, almost Flood. He misjudged it over his head.
He demanded a raise months after slipping on a key play in Game 7 of the 1968 World Series. From then on, his days in St. Louis appeared to be numbered.
He liked St. Louis. He liked playing for the Cardinals. And he just didn't think it was right that he had no say in where he would play.
Since the early days of professional baseball, a short clause inserted into every major league contract had given owners complete control over their players. Even when a player's yearly contract was up, the owner could unilaterally renew his contract, essentially binding him to the same franchise for life, allowing him to be paid whatever the owner felt he was worth or traded on a whim.
So it wasn't anger, it was more, this is not right. This just is not my America. Curt was very much aware of what was going on in the world, and he was very much aware of the fact that he did not have his civil rights.
Me as a black man, I'm probably a lot more sensitive to the rights of other people because I have been denied these rights.
You would have been held to your contract in perpetuity, and you would have truly seen what a slave, an indentured servant. You and I, we are indentured servants because we have jobs, we have contracts. This is indentured servitude. Because this is what Caucasians like to do. Oh, no, we weren't slaves. Yes, you were. You were a slave. Because you have to get a legal understanding at this point. Legally, it's paper. Somebody has you held by a contract And that contract is the indentured paper.
Wow.
And it's saying at a certain time period, like, I could let you go. I could let you go.
Right.
Whoever has that other piece of the contract.
Right.
That's how that works. Same thing if you're a so-called slave. So it has papers. Yo, I own this person. Prove it. Here's the paperwork. Same thing with an indenture. And you can look at indenture. You could go to a book, and this is in particular to these Caucasian individuals. All you have to do is read a book that they were white and they were slaves. In there on page 7, it talks about you specifically, you the Caucasian, blonde hair, blue-eyed, coming out of the Caucasus Mountains. Just like you have an American, you would have a Jamaican, you have a Trinidadian, you have a European, you are Caucasian, coming out of the Caucasus Mountains. That's all it is. And it describes who you are and what it is. So that book is called They Were White and They Were Slaves. You could get another book that's called White Trash, 400 Years of Slavery. You get another book that's called White Cargo. And these individuals were chattel slaves. They were on ships coming from Europe, in particular, the Irish, coming over here to the Americans. And they were owned by the black crowns of Europe. See, this is the type of conversation that we need to have so that we can bring some understanding. So white superiority is truly white inferiority because they understand and know that the black man, no gender specific. So the black man and the black woman, they're the physical manifestation of God on earth. They're the original beings. And you could go into Herodotus and understand that. So now if you understand that these individuals that are running around, that they actually own you, quote unquote, that they're quote unquote superior to you, that's what we're seeing right now. Wow. But the unfortunate part is our minds are controlled.
Yeah.
So, and the control mechanism is through education, academia, religion. That's the control mechanism. That's what it is. Wow. So that's why our children are out here. So when they talk about all black on black crime or stuff, let me tell you something. If I put a camera and I put it in the 80s and I put it in Bensonhurst or Howard Beach, you'll see these cats acting savage, barbaric. You understand what I'm saying? When they was killing one another as well. That was called the mob. So if I put a camera out there, that'd be called Caucasian on Caucasian crime. Right. Because when you start getting into this racial stuff, you know, it's black, it's brown, it's yellow, it's white, it's red. But you want to know how beautiful the Most High God is? The Aboriginal, that A, B, and O blood, that still represents everything has to come out of the black man, quote unquote. Everything. Because each and every one of those races come out of us. Point blank, period, end of story. We don't have to go into genetics or anything like that. A doctor knows exactly who the original man on earth is and what is that original blood type. That's the O blood. The aboriginal. Wow. You understand what I'm saying?